when we built this technology, of course, everybody is like, guys, like, why are you doing like hiring? Actually, candidates like talking to AI recruiters. If you are, let's say, in your 40s or 50s and you are feeling like somebody needs to give you a white glove treatment before you go on a job, it's a very different thing. It's actually a sale.
Your specific case, you are actually designing a product which goes a little bit further, right? You are almost like designing judgment. How do you build that nuance and without importing bias and other issues?
I think anybody who actually has spent time in HR, and we've had this in recording from many of the companies that we have worked with, AI is reducing bias. As much as it is counterintuitive to a lot of people.
Since we are also building in the AI space, I feel like every use case, there is much more than what people see on our websites, and there is so much complexity hidden. And especially I feel like in voice AI,
Option-wise, this was the biggest risk that will candidates like it, and we've completely debunked it. If you wanted to assess like 1,000 candidates for a coding round, you will have like a 15-20% response rate because people don't want to do those coding round exercises anymore, right? BabbleBot's interviews is at least 3x of that.
you or your customers actually measure ROI. Is it like what metric do you use?
One of our products is closer to an outcome, right? And the other is more around capability. The whole idea was that can you remove people at the top of the funnel, give my team the top 5-10 people that should be spoken to or the most highly qualified, and it will be very, very easy for them. It's a less stressful thing. Everybody enjoys it. And if there is one thing I want to leave this audience with today is
Will AI push the limit? Conversations with no gimmick. Tech and juice collide in sync. That you're on, don't stop to think.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Build AI. Today I have Roli Gupta, who is the founder and CEO of BabbleBots AI. Hi, Roli.
hey, hi guys.
Yeah, very interesting to be talking to you again. We recently spoke about what's happening in the voice AI recruitment space, and I have been following your company, and it was always on my agenda to do this podcast with you.
Good.
So for the audience, BabbleBots AI work for companies that are recruiting, and their AI agents basically do human-like interviews.
Yeah.
Right? And Roli is obviously going to double click on it and expand. But just in terms of the background, she's IIT Bombay grad, UC Berkeley, School of Business, and has also studied at University of Michigan. And before BabbleBots, Roli has spent about 20 years in startups across US, India, has been in roles around product growth, ops team, multiple 0 to 1 journey. And in her last job, she was the SVP at Copper. So, very sort of relevant background. The company launched in 2022 and then the product in 2023. And they have already secured pre-seed backing from Sign, IIT Bombay, Z21 Ventures, and other angels. And I'm so excited. This is the first time I am actually doing this podcast with somebody who's doing AI first time. So welcome again. Roli.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. So maybe, it always helps to give some context to the audience that what is the problem that you're solving here? I probably define it in a very simplistic way, but if you could actually sort of expand on it, what is the problem you're solving? When did you come across it actually? And how did you build the conviction to solve it as well? That initial story.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me here, Amit. And you've done many broadcasts, and I'm the first one in AI first. So I'm thinking I've almost forgotten what are people building if it's not AI now.
Yeah.
So I know founders are building a lot of things, but AI is magical. I mean, I think we got on this journey a little bit earlier than I think a few other people, but I honestly have felt, so this is my 10th year actually I've finished my 10 years as an entrepreneur, and this is my second company. I just think that the conversation changes every week. One of the reasons I moved on from my previous startup was that I felt it was in renewable energy sector. So very good impact sector. I was super passionate about covering the whole world with solar energy panels and whatnot at this company called Uchan. The company is doing really well now. But what I realized was that it was a relatively slower moving sector at that time. It's doing much better now. And the conversations don't evolve. So what happens in such cases is that if you go to conferences, if you meet the other people from the industry, everybody's kind of talking about the same stuff like year after year. So to me, I felt like, the conversations have to evolve, right? And then from there, suddenly it come to AI, where the conversations are evolving every day.
Every day, literally.
The other problem is that you can't keep up with all the advancements in AI. But
Yeah.
it's exhilarating, loving every moment of building BabbleBots.ai. How did we come across this? See, as an entrepreneur, I think all of us end up at some point we do realize very in a very internal way that we cannot build whatever we want to build if you don't have the right team. So I think that that realization comes to every entrepreneur eventually. Question is like, do you do anything about it? Do you solve it for yourself or do you solve it for others? So when I had moved out of my first startup, I was trying to figure out like what is the next big problem I want to look at and do something about, and ended up speaking at EdTech was doing really well at this time. So this is 2019, and ended up speaking to the CEO at Toppers, Ishan. He said that they had raised around, I think, Series B or Series C, and they needed to build like this whole distribution with the salespeople. And effectively, the mandate that I had picked up was that to hire hundreds of salespeople and train them, hiring and training them in every month. So that seemed like an impossible task because every process around recruitment was so people oriented and it was so slow and inefficient that it was actually eye opening to me that how broken hiring was at scale. And I am an engineer and I actually think a lot like an engineer and a product person. And to me, recruitment ended up being an engine which was 1% efficiency, right? You hire out of the 100 people that you are sort of in some way engaged with. And I was like, there is no other machine in the world that runs at such low efficiency. So I feel like there is something that needs to be done about that. And then I think some dots connected because I've spent about 10 years in the Bay Area as well, working in a couple of startups. One of them was actually building natural language capabilities for searching docs. So I had some idea about using generally computational linguistics and computers to build products. So I think that's kind of where it connected, that I felt that the bottleneck in hiring was around our ability to speak to a lot of people with a very fresh mind every time, which is very difficult if you have to hire hundreds of people, and then be able to sort of be a little bit like, structured about who you are hiring. So that was really the seed of BabbleBots, is to be able to remove that bottleneck where at the top of the funnel in hiring, we need people. So the whole idea was that can you remove people at the top of the funnel, give my team the top 5-10 people that should be spoken to or the most highly qualified, and it will be very easy for them. It's a less stressful thing. Everybody enjoys doing it, and you are able to get to the right talent really fast. So I think in the absence of removing that bottleneck, I couldn't find a way to actually get to that outcome. So that's really how I think the story of BabbleBot started, and the inspiration came. But it has evolved quite a bit. I mean, we're still solving the same problem, but I think it's even bigger than I thought. So I think in some way it's a happy problem to have, is like, oh my God, like, Topper was a very narrow window, but I think this problem is really big and there are some really fundamental things that you can do with AI and we can talk about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can relate to it so much. I'm a third-time founder, and in India, and mostly I did like very high value work type of companies. So required like very high analytical talent. It's like finding a needle in a haystack in India. But I think the biggest problem that we were facing, to your point, is the amount of management time that used to go in talking to a whole lot of people that could have easily been taken care of. But it's just like the amount of time it takes for everybody to do those interviews, and it makes a lot of sense actually. So, and like something, since we are also building in the AI space, I feel like every use case, there is much more than what people see on our websites, and there is so much complexity hidden. And especially I feel like in voice AI, like, my favorite example is like if people are calling up a restaurant to book a table, they have a lot of motivation to get a table booked, right? Because they need to take the family or friends. So they will be okay, listening to an AI talking to them and taking the reservation. But like an outbound sales rep, it just doesn't work because the other guy has no motivation, right? So basically, what I was getting to is, given that this every AI product, we know there's a lot more than meets the eye on the website and Twitter and LinkedIn and all. And this is especially like somewhere, something where if an AI recruiter is calling, it has to be sounding very natural, and the person should be like, motivated enough to go through the interview. What are the kind of complexities that you have solved in building this solution?
Yeah, okay. Great question. And I'm glad that we are going a little bit deep in the technology side, because I think what has happened is I think a lot of people have started assuming ye to ban jayega. Right, they see that you kind of almost write off whatever has been built, so just a little background. We started building in January of 2022, and at that time actually ChatGPT was also not released, so none of this Gen AI madness was actually on the horizon. ChatGPT was released in November of 2022, and 2023 is when basically we were getting something new from one of these big labs every day, pretty much. And then 2024, people started talking about agents, and 2025 is now, I think they're talking about at least some amount of enterprise adoption. But 2025, I think, is turning out to be more a year of like these web browser agents, and vibe coding is, I think, the flavor of this year so far, right? So we started building. So the reason I was bringing this up is it was actually, there were no easy stacks with which we could, in fact, connect with, right? So you had to do STT, speech to text, text to speech, the whole processing, figuring out what should be the next follow-on question, figuring out all the exceptions that happen in a human-like conversation, right? If I ask you to speak something again, if I just ask you to wait a minute while I'm thinking, if you want to say, hey, I want to just take a pause, like there's so many little things that actually we don't think, we are not thinking. Our brain is spending zero energy on making those decisions, right? But AI has to be, at that time, had to be trained to be able to actually understand what were all these complications, not even complications, honestly, they are more like how natural conversations look, right? So we spent a lot of time trying to mimic that natural conversation through a sort of a conversational AI frameworks that were available at that time, and we built a bunch on that. We even ended up building with a lot of models, not too many, thankfully, because those would have become a little bit redundant after the Gen AI thing. So we spent a lot of time fixing the voice. And the biggest thing, there are two main things with voice, especially when you are having like this real life conversation, right? So one is actually pause detection, that when do I know you are done talking as a candidate, right? So with the human beings, we don't think that anymore. I can pretty much pick whether you are done with your answer or not. So that is one. The second thing is actually latency. So you and I are talking and I'm taking like 5 seconds to respond every time. This podcast will get over in 10 minutes because it's a very unpleasant conversation then because it's too slow, right? So, and the third thing, which used to be a very key design principle, and it's still, so our first agent is called Tina, and I have a picture of a board which had the Tina design principles basically. And one of them was that Tina could never sound stupid, right? So again, if you are talking to a bot and then you realize that this thing is not really understanding me, again, it's a big put off for you. Even if you're a job seeker, right? You want to have an intelligent conversation. So intelligence at the speed of human conversation while not speaking over when you are speaking, like being respectful about like your part in like your part of the conversation, right? Those are the three things that are actually fairly unsolved at that time. Even now they are not fully solved, but definitely more solved than before. So those are the things that actually you don't see behind the product, because you feel that conversation just feels like, oh, acha, it's feeling like I'm talking to somebody on Google Meet, but you're actually not talking to a human on Google Meet. And to simulate that was a big endeavor that we started off with. Yeah.
Many things that you said, actually, I can relate to it. On the first one itself, we tried out outbound calling agents a couple of times. I meant like couple of industries. And one of the things was the minute there's a voicemail, all outbound agents feel that they can't figure out like what. Yeah.
So I'll tell you one thing from there, Amit. So when we built this technology, of course, everybody is like, guys, like, why are you doing like hiring? This is a generally applicable stack, right? So why are you only using for hiring? And we actually spent some cycles brainstorming, is there some other use case that seems to be a good use case to be entering the market with? We couldn't figure out, because sales is the last one. You don't like to buy from a bot. It's a human problem. It has nothing to do with technology. That is the thing, right? And so now, you have one side, you got somebody from whom you are trying to take a check, right? Of course, that person has all the power in this conversation. But so on the other side, there's somebody who wants a check from you. So even if the technology is not as clean and sophisticated, this person is the job seeker is going to go through hoops to be able to get a chance to actually represent themselves and have at least a chance to talk to somebody in the company, which otherwise they would not have gotten because their resume would have been rejected, or so many other things could have happened, right? So the power dynamics are completely reverse when it comes to sales versus when it comes to hiring. And that is why the hiring is going to be one of the first use cases that will see mass adoption before phone bots. I mean, you can spam people on the phones, but I just don't think that that's actually going to. Yeah, I think it's not a good human UX. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, motivation is required. Absolutely. And so what I gather is that when you were looking at this number 1, 2, 3 and other issues that you solved in that, the complexity. There's a lot of engineering which would have gone into it. And so tell us a little bit about that. Like apart from you, who else is there in the team, and how do you what part of product engineering you take care of? Is there somebody else like CTO, engineering head, engineer?
Yeah. Very happy. Always happy to talk about my team. So we've been around 3.5 years. So the team in the beginning is not the full team now, but we do have some people from that time as well. So I'm a product person. So I'm the interface between what a customer wants or what a user wants and the experience that we can provide, but I'm not the one who's writing code. So we've never had, like, in some sense, like a full-time CTO, but we've had very sharp engineers. So like one of our lead engineers is from one of the IIT CS. He did his like BTech in artificial intelligence and data sciences, so very, very relatable. He's been with us for almost 3 years now, built some of the earliest versions, of what we had built. We've had a couple of people spend more than 2.5 years, many of them from IITs. So we've had a very good, I think we've had a very sharp team in terms of, especially because this is a very ambiguous area. You want people who are comfortable in ambiguity and figuring out a path there, because there was nobody to guide in particular that this is what. Nobody knew. It's not even a function of seniority or junior. It is just that nobody knew how to really do this, right? So I think we've always been a team of fairly fast moving and smart engineers who are comfortable with ambiguity and build something out. We all also sort of have an innate desire to solve this problem. I think everybody in some way, shape or form in the team has had some frustration with either being hired or hiring. So I think all of us can imagine what a better experience looks like. So I think in that sense, there's a lot of cohesiveness in how we want to approach this. So yeah, we have half a team. So we are about 14 people now. Half the team is in engineering, then myself, and the rest on the customer side and marketing. So customer and marketing. So that's a split right now. And I think we've always had generally a majority of the team in engineering, because we're building a lot of things from scratch.
Yeah. And it's not easy to build engineering teams. So kudos to you.
Yes. Yeah. Especially my product, I'll tell you, it's as compared to GenAI, SaaS feels like a piece of cake right now, because SaaS is a deterministic workflows, right? If you can get the database stable enough and you know the workflow, and I know it takes time to get the workflow right, but once you get it right, you have a very high, like there'll be like a 99.5% availability of everything to be working as it was designed, right? It's very deterministic. The biggest problem with GenAI is, and it's not only just us, like anybody who's wrangling with GenAI, is the non-deterministic nature, right? You yourself would have seen, if you ask the same question to ChatGPT like 5 times, you get a variation in the responses you are getting. It's not the same. Well, so that actually, if you multiply that multiple times over the multiple turns in a conversation, it starts to have a very bespoke flavor to every conversation you are having and the issues that come around it in terms of accuracy, stability, and other things like that. So yeah, I think that is something that that actually we've had to learn as we go along. We're still learning. Yeah.
So I actually did an episode with my CTO on various approaches to solve some of these problems. Absolutely real problems.
Yeah.
In fact, on that, since you also mentioned about vibe coding, it looks like there are a lot of influencers on Twitter and LinkedIn who talk about this 5 minutes vibe coded apps and all that. And people who are actually building enterprise applications, or even something for SMBs but business applications, they realize there's so much that goes before, after, and solving all these complexities.
Yeah. I think we had put on LinkedIn, or I think there was a plan to put. But I think my closest analogy of wrangling with GenAI is, it is an iceberg. The vibe coding gets you to the tip of the iceberg, but 90% problem is the old style engineering issues like stability, backup, storage. How to make sure that you have enough instances. How can you auto scale these things? It's just those kind of things, right? I don't think vibe coding is getting you there. I think this is just it's getting
you can create a personal fitness app maybe, but
yeah,
I think there's a systems engineering problem.
it's a systems engineering problem. That's right. That is right.
And then in your specific case, you are actually designing a product which goes a little bit further, right? You are almost like designing judgment, and there are multiple things that come along with it, right? So there could be bias, there could be I don't know, like there could be other nuances also. Tell us a little bit about how do you, and since you take care of the product, how do you build that nuance and, without importing bias and other issues?
Yeah. So I think anybody who actually has spent time in HR, and we've had this in recording from many of the companies that we have worked with, AI is reducing bias. As much as it is counterintuitive to a lot of people, in general, and this is not only India, Amit, anywhere in the world, hiring has a lot of bias. There is a tendency for us to want to work with people who look like us, who sound like us, who maybe are their own gender, all the other parameters in which you can determine people. Skill is not always the number one sort of criteria, right? And I'm not even saying that people are doing it consciously. I think many times you're just unconsciously liking people who are like yourselves. And this is like, there's enough research around it to say that like that's what happens. That's what salespeople do, is they mirror your personality, because that's the highest way to build trust, right? So I think if you talk to any HR leader who has actually looked at GenAI solutions with an open mind, they will tell you actually these solutions are in fact reducing the bias, because they are giving a uniform platform to every candidate. I'm pretty sure, definitely for Babelbots, but even for other sure ecosystem players, I'm confident nobody is actually evaluating gender or religion or which area of the world you are coming from, right? Just from the resume. Because there's really no upside in doing that. I think earlier it used to happen because there was a lot of human judgment involved. So at least at the screening level, at the first level, second level, I would say it's only skill based now. It's skill based hiring, right? You evaluate somebody on things like how good they are at the job that they have applied for, and if you are working in the parameters in which the job is available, salary availability, your office preferences, and other things like that, right? So there's a much more, I would say, in that sense, you are evaluating people a lot more in a standardized way. So first of all, I would just like to say that actually bias is less. By just even default systems, bias is less. There are places where I can see bias can come in. So for example, let me give you an example, right? And that is where we have to be mindful. I'll give you an example of how we remove that. So there is one model that we created, which is a very popular model, which is to understand the confidence with which a candidate is speaking.
And just before you go ahead, I just want to, like, for the sake of the audience, just can you clarify that? Are you building it on top of the foundational models as a, what they call as wrapper? I mean, there's a lot of complexity in building this.
Yeah.
Or you have built your own, you fine-tuned models, you build your own models.
So that's what I was about to say. We actually have a bunch of our own models, but we are not using our own models for everything because it's not necessary to do that, right? So if you see the back end of Babelbots is a combination of things that we have built ourselves, things that we have, say, taken the LLM and just sort of like, fine-tuned it. And in some cases, it's the LLM is doing, there is no fine-tuning also. So there's a whole spectrum of build it in-house, buy it, and then refine it, and versus just like literally ping APIs at that point of time, real time, and then go on with it. So there is no, so it's definitely not like a traditional, I suppose, the way you would think of a wrapper where there is no fine tuning happening. There is a lot of stuff we have built, but actually, I don't want to necessarily speak about this as like, this is all towards the good user experience and how do you manage costs. Those are the only two things, right? Can you provide a great experience at affordable price? So all our decisions are based on that, is my candidate liking the experience? So candidate is, they don't give us the money, but they are our sort of true north, that they need to be liking the experience. So the candidate. And the second, of course, is that like, how can I be more cost efficient about it? And cost is, of course, because I think LLMs, although they have become cheap, but voice is not necessarily as cheap right now. So if you so because we are such a voice heavy sort of a user experience, that we have to be careful about like what we are doing. So I was just giving an example of one of the models that we have created in-house where bias could have crept in and if we were not mindful. So this is around confidence and how do you, actually it was around English language, sorry. Multiple, so I'll give you an example of English language. So now English language, like the model is determining that if you are good in English or you are not good in English, right? So there are, but if we were measuring for the mother tongue influence, you would have given different ratings to different people. But in our case, we don't. If you even ask us to do an analysis on mother tongue influence, we have no way to do that right now. And in fact, I know that there are large companies who want to do it because it is important for their work. But so in those cases, you have to ask for these things in writing from them that you do actually want them. But our baseline models, what we did is that we recorded hundreds of these interviews, actually found annotators across the country. And we gave the same set of data to annotators across the country to rate them on low, medium, high. right? What is the quality of the English? So 3 part only, low, medium, high. And the reason we did it was that it shouldn't be influenced by how a person speaks English in Mumbai versus how they speak in Kolkata versus how they speak in the north, right? Versus how they speak in the south, especially like tier 2 cities in these parts of the country, right? They have a very strong accent. So if we had not taken care to actually have annotators across, it may, some regional judgment would have come in. So this an example of how you have to be mindful of like some of these things to make sure that you're keeping all these kind of biases away.
Super interesting. Like I have not thought about so many things and bias. So thank you. Actually, now that we have talked a lot about the product, maybe a little bit about sales. It all comes down to that in a startup. First few customers,
Yeah.
how do you convince them in general, but then especially if you have to change behavior from our traditional recruiter flow to what you are doing. So, would be great to actually, if you can throw some light on how did you acquire customers and what were the objections and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for any of these startups, I think the first customers come from people that you know, right? Because at least they will give you a chance. At least they listen to you. So I think it did come from people not necessarily very close. So when I was doing the research for BabbleBots, I had spoken to a lot of people before we launched or even started building the first line of code. I spent like maybe 3-4 months talking to different kinds of stakeholders. Actually, funnily, just backstory. In the beginning, we thought of launching BabbleBots as an upskilling platform to help people interview better. But then I spoke to a lot of people, and it just happened that the kind of people that I was speaking to were at a senior position, and they're like, Rolly, why are you trying to take money from people who don't have a job? It's not a great business model versus the companies have this as a problem and they will pay for it. So we said, okay, never mind. We pivoted to B2B then, and that is how we actually raised funding. I don't think we would have been able to raise funding for like a B2C solution because the Indian investors, first of all, they were not.
EdTech was dead by then.
EdTech was dead, and nobody believed that voice could be done. So you
okay.
stuck in this thing of that it was unbelievable that I could have had, like, when I was proposing what I say today just seems so simple in hindsight, but when you're living through it, there's a huge disbelief that this could be possible to build, right? So that is what I saw. But once we moved to B2B, we were able to raise a little bit funds to get started. And so how to get but it took us about a year, actually, a little bit more than a year to launch the product in the markets. We had some design partners and all who came from people we knew, but then we did a launch, and then after that, a lot more, I would say, unknown customers have started to come. The key objection, if we go back to what has been the key objection actually from the early customers, is most people were not confident that the candidates will like it. And if there is one thing I want to leave this audience with today is that actually candidates like talking to AI recruiters. Candidates are not like, if you are, let's say, I don't know, in your 40s or 50s and you are feeling like somebody needs to give you a white glove treatment before you go on a job, that's a very different thing. It's actually a sale. It's not an interview. It's not an assessment, right? But 95% of the country is not that. They are people who are like earlier in their careers or even mid in their careers, and they want the right opportunities to come to them. So they are willing to, they don't have the same kind of thinking.
Is it because the AI interview that is being done by BabbleBots is slightly better or much better than the average recruiter quality which is there in this?
Absolutely. Because there's a couple of things that happen, and with all due respect to all the recruiters there, first of all, you can talk to the AI recruiters anytime that you want. So half our interviews are happening at night and weekends. So what can the poor recruiter do, right? They are not working at that time. Second thing that is happening is you can speak in your mixed language. You can speak in, so for example, I'll give you an example of a company, large company, listed company. They were working in the infrastructure sector. All the recruiters are based in Mumbai, South Mumbai, and all the candidates they had were in UP and Bihar working on a road project. And that mismatch is so high of what just being able to carry on a conversation for that. And I'm from UP, so I empathize with the guys we're talking about who used to come for these interviews. If you see that they feel more confident, like they are able to represent themselves because you don't feel judged. This actually, candidates have told us that they don't feel judged in these interviews. The accent can be managed. The accent for some of these bots are already very sort of like, they are not very polished in a normal sense, right? They are like, I would say, more mainstream Hindi, mainstream English. So there is a relatability that you're speaking to someone who's speaking like you. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that there is no time limit, right? If the candidate wants to speak for half an hour we are not stopping that interview. You are excited to speak to Tina. Tina is the name of our the first agent. For half an hour, like keep going. So you feel like you have full chance to represent. You can talk to them anytime, and it sounds more like you. And I think on all those metrics, so these are actually the more, I would say, subtle things. Even if you go into the conversation now, which is where the LLMs come in, by the way, right? So what I told you was more around voice and access, right? Where LLMs come in is that if this is a highly technical candidate, LLMs will come back with a very nice, deep, probing question, which will go deeper into whatever they spoke about, whether it is sales or whether it is technical or whether it is like, some other affiliated field. The LLM is like the humanities brain in some sense, right? And it can go deeper. That level of knowledge is not there with a lot of recruiters, right? Because it's a very specific area and you're going in deep. So I think even in the terms of the quality of the probing that you can do to evaluate somebody's skills, these AI recruiters are very, very good. So I think and that is the thing that I want to leave people with, that this was the biggest risk for people. Non-technology adoption wise, this was the biggest risk that will candidates like it, and we've completely debunked it. I just like, if you compare to, for example, if you wanted to assess like 1,000 candidates for a coding round, you will have like a 15-20% response rate, because people don't want to do those coding round exercises anymore, right? BabbleWorks interviews is at least 3x of that. Yeah. And because it's easy, it's a 15-minute conversation. You can do it anytime. It's not, you don't feel judged. It's not like assessment. So it's very, you are able to just connect with a lot more pipeline.
Fascinating insight in that use. And so what I understood is your first few customers basically came from the network, and people you had already spoken to.
Yeah, we had spoken to, somehow they got interested in us. It was very warm. So there was no sales involved. They were curious. We were able to deliver, and that's how it came. Yeah.
Right. Quick question about how do you or your customers actually measure this ROI? Is it like, what metrics do you use?
Yeah. So, see, I think we have a couple of products now. The product is quite big now. So there's a couple of different ways in which people are measuring the outcome. So in this whole conversation over the last couple of years, you would see that a lot of GenAI solutions have gone towards outcome. So one of our products is closer to an outcome, right? And the other is more around capability. So with smaller companies like startups and SMEs, we work in a much more outcome based way, where it is around how many very qualified people were they able to speak to, right? So this whole idea of that I'll be able to talk to my top 5 candidates, how close it is to reality. So they want to see how quickly can they fill the role, and are they able to find these people sooner than even at the hiring manager level than normally through the normal process. So basically time to hire is still the metrics that rules when it comes to anything in hiring. So that is one thing. If you're working with larger enterprises, they actually care a lot more about productivity. So if you see, organizations are now not wanting to actually add a lot more headcount before they have evaluated the AI options, because they know that by using these AI assistants, their existing recruiters will be 2x, 3x more productive with a little bit of training and sort of, with a little bit of time. So there they are checking. So for example, one of our customers is Ajmera Realty. So Ajmera Realty was, when we spoke to them about like the impact BabbleWorks has had to their recruitment process, it was around improvement of the productivity, right? They felt that everything was 20 to 30% faster, or like, recruiters were working at that, their internal metrics were improving on how their existing team was able to do more with less.
So just to understand, basically they will do a bunch of things before and after, but they'll send the AI recruiter to actually do the risk.
Yes, that's right. That is right. In fact, so we are only focused on the top of the funnel, right? So once you have identified through these AI scores and other things that these are my top candidates, then negotiating with them and sort of, in some sense, closing that offer, sending that offer letter out, those kind of things is still the job. Even the hiring manager interviews, right? So these are only the first round of interviews that are getting done, at least so far. We are now going deeper also, because the goal is still, can I find the top 3 candidates for any role very, very quickly? That is really our the one singular thing on this agent that we are going for.
Right. Another quick question that, for any startup, this is like an existential question, that what if this get copied? What if there are like 10, 20 more competitors which come in? What is it, the product? Is it the context, the understanding? Is it sales, marketing? Because I believe the engineering, the AI part of it is something which is getting very commoditized.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think there are a few competitors now. They may be speaking similar stuff than us. I don't know, but I mean, I know that I have noticed that if there's a lot more people talking about AI recruiters than when we started speaking about it for the first time. So definitely, I think competition catches on when it comes to these products. I don't even think it's such a new thing, by the way. I think if you give enough time, any product had been copied. Like if you see, I think recently only Sridhar Vembu, he said that Zoho was never the fast adopted product. It always, but they were there at the right price point, right motion, and they were able to get that adoption. So it wasn't like none of their products actually took off like a cursor or something, right? So I think in terms of thinking that it's easier to build now, I think building is almost always been a little bit easier unless you're doing fundamental tech, right? But now it's even more easier than whatever we were used to. But where we differentiate, by the way, is that first of all, we have done around 100,000 different candidates we've dealt with. So we have a lot of data. A lot of our conversation has become smoother because we have worked with a lot of. So if you just take our code base and replicate it today, you will still not be able to tap into the models that we have created. You will not tap into the intelligence that we have created by dealing with so many candidates over a period of time. Even that you can say, okay, if I'm around for a couple of years, you will be able to get there. First of all, we will also be there in a couple of years. So we are moving there as well. But definitely the data layer is something that you can't just like wake up and create that, because that, especially for interview data, actually, I want to just share one other insight. When we had started to build our models, we thought, yeah, why do we have to get real data? Like, can we just like not have like these recordings from somewhere and work on it, right? If you see, very few interviews get published actually. Real interviews don't get published because there's a lot of privacy concern and other things like that, right? So you have all kinds of content out there, but you will have hardly any content around actual interviews that are happening. And even when people are recording it on their Google Meet and other things, it's just like not something that is stored and recorded in a way that it is any asset so far, right? So there is no way for anybody to just suddenly come across like reams of interview data wherever that is needed. The second is, I think, which is even more interesting, is that, and I think how this podcast came about in the first place was, we took a platform and we've actually almost modularized in a way that it's a Lego brick. So any existing HR tech ecosystem player can plug into these components and in fact provide these Gen AI solutions for interview and assessment overnight. That is this new BabbleBots API platform that we have launched, right? Now, this is given us a very good avenue to be very embedded in these a few of the large ecosystem players already, and we are building more and more.
So you mean to say like all these HR SaaS platforms and other platforms which are there?
Plug it in, yeah. And now they are plugging us at a code level, right? So that is very difficult to do. If you build BabbleBots today, tomorrow morning you have like this thing and Harry Potter wand, Amit, and you create BabbleBots. You will still not be embedded in all these different players who are much bigger than BabbleBots. And we are hoping that we can give them enough hiring intelligence via an API that they can basically, we get that distribution layer from there and they get the intelligence layer from us. And we want to continue innovating on the intelligence layer. Psychometric tests, DSAs, coding challenges, everything can be done with Gen AI. But if every team goes out to build these themselves, they're going to take 2 years, 3 years each, like it has taken us. That has been quite an epiphany, and we've signed up multiple customers like that already, and it just seems like it's something that is going to connect very well.
Right. No, absolutely. There are proprietary feedback loops, there's data sets, there is customers, there are partners, there's a lot to
there's a lot more than just the product. On the product side, it's data, but on the outside is just like these where you are embedded, how quickly can they get out of your system. I think that is the thing.
Actually, before this podcast, I was just thinking about it, given that we are also like AI builders. I thought if Ruli has a recruitment AI, what if we build the interviewee side AI agent? Because I don't want to take the call myself. I'll send my consumer side AI agent to take the interview call. Do you see like a future in which this could happen?
It's already happening. So like we have a very strong proctoring method where proctoring and trying to find people who are cheating during interviews has been a cat and mouse game that has been going on for forever, right? Even before screens, there was like other ways in which people used to cheat. So it's not something that we haven't thought about or it's not happening. We see it happening a lot more in technical cases, like so non-technical roles, it's like low single digits, like 2, 3, 4% will be people will be found or suspected of cheating. It will be around 12 to 14% we've seen in technical roles. So there's definitely a higher propensity to do that. But you know what? I think, Ismay, the the issue is this again, that the candidate is actually looking for a job. And if you do all this stuff and you keep getting caught,
You want to put the best foot forward, basically. But I'll tell you, like, my question was less to do with the cheating part of it, or like, you know, you're trying to game the system with a much more intelligent like AI doing the interview. What I meant was that, let's say if somebody thinks about what would be a better Naukri today, like somebody who can actually build a great database of multi-dimensional attributes on a candidate. So it's not just like a two-dimensional resume, but actually the AI has spoken to the candidate, understood everything. And now imagine like Babelbot's AI talking to this AI agent and understanding about the candidate. Would that, is there a future? I just feel like we know that bots will be making payments to the other bots. Why not agents talking to the other agents?
I think it's difficult because if you see, what you're saying is that your whole human context will now be hosted on whatever is the next version of Naukri, let's say, right? Your
Yeah.
whole person, as your whole experience and everything that you could say, Amit, in an interview, you are somehow able to port that into a digital being, and that digital being is
Yeah.
talking to
And I can give like 50 interviews now every month.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah, right. Actually, so I think we're quite far from that. I don't think that's something that I even see in the next 5 years, where you are able to, your whole personality, like you can have small conversations, but you can't have a 30-minute conversation where I feel confident that I know Amit at the end of it. You will be sounding like ChatGPT with M dashes, basically in that case. So there is no personality. You will be accurate, but there will be no personality. And I don't believe that actually, I doubt. I think there'll be some other format of that. See, I think broadly what I think is going to happen is that the candidates will also have a little bit more agency. But if you see, actually, this whole hiring ecosystem has become a very fascinating, like sort of almost an academic problem at this point to me, is that what is the long-term workforce going to look like? And if you see more and more, the tech roles are kind of going down, right? In the last 2-3 years, they've come, and there was something that was published that was saying that's actually lesser than 2019. Before the COVID and everything, the tech roles are going small. So it's almost like a K-type, a sort of a graph that I'm imagining, where you will see that actually the very good candidates may in fact want to interview with 10, 15, 20 companies together. So within like 2-3 days, they can decide which are the best options they have. And the good ones will always be in demand. It's just like now they can move much faster because they are not physically limited by their own presence. And there may be other ways in which they can demonstrate that they are actually very, very good. The problem is going to be with the people who are not that good, right? Because they are going to have so that ratio is going to be even more skewed. If the ratio is 1 out of 100, it is going to be 1 out of 115, 1 out of 200 very quickly. So I think in that case, when you have so little power in the equation, you will want to do whatever is humanly possible to get to land that opportunity. So I think there'll be kind of people who will have an abundance because of AI, and there'll be some that will in fact need to work a little harder, and you'll have to move fast. I think broadly one thing that I see that goes across anything that I'm saying is that these cycle times of time to hire will just go down because there's so much bottlenecking that is getting removed with AI.
Right. Yeah.
I hope you
And-
answered that question.
No, absolutely. I think that's a proper 1 hour discussion in itself.
Yes.
Like what will happen in the future.
Yes.
But in the interest of time, I'll just there's just one last question I have. I mean, we can talk for hours, and I'm sure there's so many other topics. But I just wanted to ask that, given both your understanding of recruitment and this industry, and that you're building AI solution, is there a contrarian view you have on the future of hiring itself, which most of the industry will not agree to?
What does the industry agree with?
I think both, right? So the traditional recruitment industry and let's say some of your AI peers, if you look at it, I don't know, there are some regular beliefs, right? Like traditional recruitment industry will believe that, let's say, AI will never be able to do interviews,
Okay.
maybe,
Yeah.
right? But then the AI peers all of them believe that it will be possible.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'll give you a little history of Babelbots because we've been contrarian right from day one. So, when we went back to office, really, February of 22 is when we were all back in office, when the whole world was work from home. We said that there is no way to build a high-tech, fast-moving business if you are working from home. At least I didn't know how to build it, and I also built a team that was equally passionate about co-working in the same thing. So we've always sort of had very independent views on things. The second contrarian view at that time was also that candidates are not going to like this experience. That was the biggest risk that I thought about, right? That also we debunked that actually that is not true. You have to see what is it that you are like. A lot of these things are in our mind, actually not transpired, right? Not everybody wants to work from home, right? Not some candidates are just happy to get a chance to speak. The one that I feel right now, I don't know if it's contrarian or not, but I've started to see this one thing that, see, I think what is happening in recruitment, it's a $650 billion market. It's a really big market globally, right? So that means that amount of money is changing hands every year for the services of making people show up at work and deliver their skill set towards a economic goal. If you see at the top of the funnel, there is a lot of tech there, right? So you have job boards generally, and you have career pages. There's more tech enabled. But as you go towards the bottom of the funnel, it becomes more and more processy, right? There's more and more people involved, right? So at the absolute end, the situation is there's somebody from HR calling that candidate every 2-3 days in this 2 months notice period that are you showing up or not? Are you showing up or not? That is how human intensive it is towards the bottom of the funnel, right? And what I feel is going to happen is that this whole stack is going to get displaced. I don't think the ends will change, okay? But the stack is going to get displaced. So, for example, you will have a lot more product work that is being done, which was being done by human beings. That work will still be done, but it is now getting done by AI agents. So they are going to see, and we have seen, Amit, and many times, about 70 to 80% of the top of the funnel work that recruiters used to do is getting done by AI right now. So now you have these databases of candidates, that you have AI agents and then you have humans. So that is going to be the new step. And if you continue to believe that there's going to be no AI in the middle, I think that is I think people are in for a root shock there. And the other thing is also, interestingly, I'll tell you, even if you see that interface between AI agents and the pools of people, right, the Naukris and the LinkedIns of the world, I think they will be disrupted in non-standard ways. There won't be a next LinkedIn or a next Naukri because there's never been a next of anything. It's always new, right? I think they are going to get as a company or as a, let's say, a founder, your access to candidates is going to get more democratized, and you will be not so dependent on Naukris and LinkedIn of the world to find your own talent because of social media and our ability to actually use social media at scale because of AI. Right? So if you have, let's say, a really powerful Gen AI powered career page, you have a full control on the message that you want to create to the candidate. So you don't need to pay money to LinkedIn because all you need is a good presence. And so I think they are going to get disrupted in unexpected ways. But on the other side, the process side, it is going to get disrupted in the expected way, which is that a bunch of the work that is being done by human beings is now going to get done by AI agents. I don't know how many people truly believe it, but I 100% believe that is going to be the world, and I think it's going to be good. I think for the candidates is going to be a better thing than what it is today.
Amazing. Contrarian views and beliefs is what startups are built on. It has been wonderful talking to you, Dolly. Thank you so much for your time. And, for the audience, if you are building in the AI space and want to jam on real world use cases, reach out to us. Thanks for listening. And thanks, Dolly, again.
Yeah, this was really, really fun, Amit. Great questions.
Absolutely.
Nice chatting.